So welcome everyone to the first Enter the US Market webinar. We will have an overview of the US healthcare and life sciences market, and then we will have presentations from the states of Virginia and Maryland. Massachusetts was unfortunately not able to join today, but we will make that up to you at a later instance. So this is the agenda for today. We'll start with just a few opening words from our side, and then we will have the presentations by Claudia Hidu, who's head of New York, Business Sweden New York, and head of Life Science and Healthcare for Business Sweden Americas. After that, we will have the presentation on investment opportunities in Virginia by Grace Festa. She's Director of Biopharmaceuticals at Virginia Economic Development Partnership. And followed by Stephanie Trop, Director of the Office of Life Sciences at Maryland Department of Commerce. And then we'll probably have some time for Q&A and discussions, and then we will end the webinar in a little bit more than an hour. And as we have already mentioned, the webinar is being recorded. But first, I would like to say a few words about the Health3-2-1 project or program. And first of all, I'm Anna Ribi. I work at SweCare, and I'm joined today by Ulf Borbos, who's my colleague from SweCare. And we also have representatives from our project partners at Business Turku and Tallinn Technopole Science Park. And Health3-2-1 is an EU-funded project. Our aim is to support life science companies or SMEs in our 3 countries to expand to both the UK and the US markets. And the project spans 3 years. Started this May, and we have been preparing and now starting with the real activities. And we will go on until April 2027, and aiming to recruit something like 35 enterprises from the Central Baltic region who will receive support to begin their export to the UK and US markets. And the actual goal in itself is to have 15 companies achieving sales in one of the markets. And we know that you are all, about the program and are interested, and we do encourage you to apply to the program. And if you're chosen, you will get up to 20,000 euro worth of EU-funded support. We have these market-specific seminars and trainings, and we'll have a little bit more thematic sessions as we go along. And there will also be tailored coaching. And we will have the business missions, probably 2 of them for each location. And of course, ongoing support from the partners during the program. The market webinars, we have already had one for the UK. It was really quite good. So if you're interested in the UK, we encourage you to listen to that as well. There is a recording. And now today we have the first US market webinar, and we'll have the following ones next week. And in November, we will have the selection of companies to join us. And these are our contact details. So that's very short about the program. And now I will stop sharing. And so the US market, we chose this as a market because it's the largest healthcare and life science markets in the world. And we hear a lot of companies saying that, okay, we might consider the European market, but let's go to the US first. And we also believe that companies from our areas, from around the Baltic, have solutions that are interesting for the market. So we really hope to support these companies to achieve sales and get a soft landing in the US. And I won't speak much further. I will just introduce Claudia Hidu once again from Business Sweden in New York, who will give us an overview of the US life sciences and healthcare markets.
Thank you so much. Anna. So this is obviously going to be a little bit of an intro and overview. I think, and I have what, 20 minutes, 25 minutes, roughly?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So you'll just have to, I can speak about this all day. So you just have to interrupt me if I'm going a little bit too long-winded here. Perfect. Hopefully you can all see my screen.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Let's see here if I can. There we go. Okay, so as Anna mentioned, the US healthcare market, it's really a question of when are you going to enter the US market rather than if. It has a fantastic pull due to being the largest healthcare market. And it offers really good opportunities, but something to keep in mind is that the system is quite difficult to navigate because we, as Europeans, are used to more of a socialized system. The US system has aspects of it, but it's a little bit different in terms of how they approach new technologies, procurement, and value in the healthcare system. Just quickly on the left-hand side here, you can see the healthcare spending as a percentage of GDP. Estonia is actually significantly lower than the European average, while Finland and Sweden and most other OECD countries are pretty standardized around the 10-11% mark. US, however, is at 17%. So even though they spend the most on healthcare, doesn't necessarily mean that it's the most efficient healthcare system. So it's not really a direct correlation there. Healthcare spending, obviously, most of it is in health services, while we see pharmaceutical. Digital health is still a very, very small piece, but it's obviously growing as we move into more of a digitalized world. So obviously, we have a very big election in 2 weeks. It's really still a coin toss in terms of who is going to win. And healthcare reform has not necessarily been as much of a central issue. They're still lacking a lot of information in terms of the detailed plans that both candidates are proposing. But we are seeing that both of them want to make healthcare more affordable. What that actually look like, it's hard to tell. Trump probably going to be a little bit more focused on deregulation, private market incentives, and reduced federal involvement, while Harris is probably going to do the opposite, more oversight, more federal funding, and kind of expanding the Affordable Care Act and Medicare and Medicaid enrollment. But beyond that, so we'll see. It's going to be really interesting to see how that impacts the overall landscape within healthcare. But healthcare and the system is so integrated in the US that I don't think we can expect to see any large reforms that within the timeline of this program is going to impact you significantly. Other key happenings in the US is just good to be aware of. And the reason why we want to recommend that you follow the trends is that the stakeholders that you are talking about, this is on their mind. So if you understand what they're thinking about, if you understand what's going through their mind and what keeps them up at night, you can be able to adjust and adapt your value proposition and how you engage with them. So first of all, pharmaceuticals are cutting back on R&D. We're seeing a lot of the larger big pharma are having layoffs. They're reducing costs in any way possible. Just because there's a slowdown in demand, there was a height in terms of COVID and the vaccine, and a lot of investment went into that, and now we're kind of seeing that downturn. We're also seeing a patent cliff. So in the next coming years, 200 billion in annual sales are going to be reduced due to generics coming into the market and patents expiring. We also have had an impact due to the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act. The Inflation Reduction Act has mostly focused on the green transition and subsidies within local manufacturing, but what it has focused on when it comes to pharma is pricing cuts. So they have actually listed 10 medicines that the CMS, Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, can now actually negotiate the prices for. So this is also a huge impact for pharmaceuticals when it comes to R&D, because we pretty much had free drug pricing before. So we're going to see how that evolves depending on the presidential candidate as well. M&A activity, we've seen a slowdown. The market is finally picking up. This is obviously something that's going to be on your mind as you get more established in the US, because you're probably looking for US investors. It's slowly getting there. It's still a little bit not back to the volumes we'd had in 2021, 2019, etc., but we're slowly getting more traction. And then something that I would say is quite universal is obviously healthcare staffing crisis. It's a result from COVID. We've seen a large chunk of the workforce leave their jobs due to being burnt out, not having good enough salaries or benefits, etc. And a lot of these roles are still unfilled. Obviously, we're trying to see technology as a way to fill that gap, but it's not necessarily efficient. So also keep that in mind. The health systems are under a lot of pressure when it comes to filling these roles, cost cutting. So you need to make sure that you communicate your value prop in terms of their world, what's on their mind. And here, healthcare staffing is definitely it. So if we move on to the complex version of all the different organizations that you might meet, HHS, the US Department of Health and Human Services, is kind of the overarching organization that have different various branches and agencies that regulate the healthcare industry. For you, I would say the FDA and the Medicare, the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services is the most important ones. So CMS, they manage the Medicare and Medicaid program, which most of you are gonna probably interact with. And that is also where you can get reimbursed. So CMS is a very important player from a reimbursement perspective, because a lot of the private players, the private insurers, look to CMS to see what they're doing. So they're kind of the guiding light in this industry. And then obviously for some of you, FDA. FDA regulates safety and efficacy. You need the regulatory approval for most products in order to be on the market. So these are two central ones. FDA, our advice here is that you always connect and interact with them as early as you can. We've had many, in this case, Swedish companies who have had a very pleasant experience with the FDA because they can guide you. They want to make sure that you get an approval. So they want to interact with you early on so that they can tell you, this is what we're missing for an approval. This is what we need to see. This is the pathway that we see for you. So the earlier the possible, just keep in mind that FDA has quite long lead times. So plan accordingly if you have a kind of end date for an approval. So the insurance market. Obviously, there's various payers for medical service in the US. So we've divided up into the private insurance, public programs, and patient out-of-pocket. I'm not going to touch on these in detail, but employer-sponsored is the most common private insurance. That means that I get my insurance through my employer. They pay for various aspects of dental, vision, medical, whatever you can imagine. To make this a little bit more complicated, you buy the healthcare insurance, you pay a premium to have it each month, which could vary from a few $100s up to $1,000, depending on a little bit of the type of plan that you have. So that's the premium. But then you also have a deductible. So think about it, at least in Sweden, as your, car insurance. You have to pay a certain price or a certain amount before your insurance kicks in. That is the deductible. That could also range up to, I've seen cases where it's up to $10,000. So imagine that from a European perspective. I'm paying a premium, but I also have to pay $10,000 before my healthcare insurance kicks in. And after that, depending on your plan, you can either have that the plan is 100% covered, you can have that it's 80% covered and you pay 20% out of pocket. So it's a very complex system, something that you need to keep in mind in terms of who is actually paying for your services or your products. And to put this into a little bit of a broader context, 60% of all personal bankruptcies in the US are due to healthcare costs. So this is a big aspect where we're probably going to see both, or whoever wins the presidential election, focus a little bit more. How do we maybe make healthcare more affordable? So employer sponsor is most common. You can also buy it individually. Let's say your employer is not covering it, you can buy it on the market. TRICARE is for the uniformed services, so military, etc. And then we have the public programs. So you have Medicare and Medicaid. Medicare is a federal program that is for the elderly, so usually over 65. You pay a small amount through your taxes as you're in the working age, and then you enroll. And we're going to go deeper into Medicare so you can see the different components. Medicaid, public plans that are funded partly by the federal government, but they are also funded by the state government. So here you have a little bit more of a complex aspect because it's health insurance for low-income individuals and the disabled, but they are administered at a state level, which means that you have 50 different stakeholders to keep in mind if you want to understand the Medicaid coverage for your product or service. We have the Veterans Affairs or Health Administration. They are a single payer system and they also deliver their own care for veterans and their families. And then a little bit like I already mentioned, you have the co-pays and out-of-pocket. So if I can't afford, I can pay my bill on my own. For example, I had a cold. I went to the doctor's office. They did a COVID test. It was positive. That bill came out to roughly $460 that I would have to pay out of pocket if I didn't have insurance. And then we obviously have the uninsured or underinsured. So roughly 9% of the population does not have any insurance coverage, which is in today's healthcare cost in the US is obviously not a sustainable system. But we also have underinsured. So we have Americans who have insurance, but it doesn't really cover everything. So again, given that you have various plans that can cover up to 50% or 80%, it's still a large chunk that you have to pay on your own. Anna, do we leave questions to the end or?
You decide. What do you think? Maybe it's okay to take a few.
Yeah, I can't see. So just let me know if you guys have any questions because I know it's a lot of material.
Yeah, is diagnostics covered either by public or private insurance? Diagnostics.
It depends. It's the fantastic answer that most of you are going to get. It depends a little bit of what type of product, what type of population. Again, the insurance plans differ significantly. And from an insurance perspective, and we'll get into that in a little bit, is it necessary? Is this from a private insurance perspective? They're revenue driven. They're gonna think, is this something that is gonna reduce our cost? CMS, is this medically necessary for the patient population? So you would have to do a little bit of due diligence there to see if your specific product is covered. So Medicare and Medicaid, the main publicly funded health plans, like I said, for senior 65 and Medicaid for low income and disabled. So here to the left, you see the parts of Medicaid. So you have A, B, and D. So hospital insurance for A, medical insurance for B, and then drug coverage for D. So the IRA has focused a little bit more on drug coverage. They have capped the monthly expense for insulin to $35 a month. They've capped the out-of-pocket amount to $2,000. Again, $2,000 is a lot per month on just drugs, but there's a cap at least. So we're moving in the right direction. So A and B is called Original Medicare. And then you can purchase drug coverage through Part D. And just to keep in mind, even though you're 65 and plus, you have contributed to Medicare through taxes, all through your working life, you still have to pay for this if you want B. So B is roughly $170 a month. So the system is always asking you to pay something, just varying degree. Then we have Medicare Advantage. A lot of you are going to hear this concept. It is the insurance of Medicare, but it's provided by the private insurance. So they have decided to develop Medicare Advantage, where they're bundling Original Medicare and most likely also drug coverage, and you can buy that off the private market. So Medicare Advantage is also something that is delivered by the individual insurance companies per state. So also a little bit difficult, while Medicare Original is federal. So let's say Blue Cross Blue Shield in North Carolina, in their Medicare Advantage plan, they can cover A, B, C, D, E, F of types of services. But Blue Cross Blue Shield in Nevada, something else. So just keep that in mind in terms of the complexity of the system and how you decide which strategy you want to put in place when it comes to the US. Roughly, Medicaid is around, 90 million people are enrolled in Medicaid, and for Medicare, there's around 60 million individuals. So, private insurance. This is where it becomes very interesting because a lot of you are going to go after private insurance coverage for reimbursement. You have 5 players that are pretty much controlling the market. There's been a lot of consolidation in recent years, but these are the players that you should keep in mind. United Health Group, CVS, which is also the largest one of the largest pharmacy chains in the US. They merged with Aetna. You have Anthem, Blue Cross Blue Shield, Humana, and Cigna. So just wanted to also give you a little bit of perspective, because as you're following the news, you're going to hear a lot about the ACA, the Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare. So that was introduced in 2010 to make sure that the health insurance coverage was increased, and you can see the significant impact on that in 2010. That is going to be one of those aspects that's going to be up for discussion, where the Harris administration wants to expand that, and Trump has been a little bit more vague in terms of what he wants to do. But 65% of all patients are covered under private insurance today. So that is, again, from a strategy perspective, who is paying for your services? That's why you need to figure out, is your strategy to go towards the private insurance? Is it CMS? Because all of these different players are going to have different aspects and value props that you need to highlight. So FDA, this is not going to be relevant for all of you because FDA regulates most, but not all. So there's caveats where you need to figure that out. So for example, clinical decision supports, they gave out guidelines almost 2 years ago where they have outlined which ones are regulated and which ones aren't. So you just have to make sure you do your due diligence to see if FDA needs to be part of your strategy, because it's going to significantly impact your timeline of entering the US. And it's probably going to be one of the first questions that any stakeholder that you talk to is going to ask. What's your FDA status, and who's going to pay for this? So those 2 central questions are questions you need to be able to answer before you are put in front of any stakeholder. But quickly on the FDA, they categorize medical devices into classes. So it's a class risk system. Class 1, roughly 35% of products, class 2, and then class 3. Pretty straightforward here, but what is something to keep in mind is obviously class 1, you don't necessarily need approval, but you need to make sure that you register with the FDA. So it's an establishment registration. That is a fee of $9,280 for the upcoming fiscal year. So that is just, you need to pay roughly $10,000 just to be registered with the FDA. If you are looking for a 510K, which is a system or a process where there is a device significantly similar or equivalently similar to a product that's already on the market, you can use a 510K. It means like you're basically saying there's already a product on the market that's similar enough to ours. Here's all the proof that we are providing the same results. We're not doing anything significantly different. Can we go for a 510K? So these products that are already on the market are called predicate devices. So you need to figure out, is there a predicate device for your product in order to go for a 510K? A 510K application, roughly, what could it be? Anything from $10,000 to $24,000 in application fees. FDA has a small business program where you can reduce the fee. You just have to make sure that you get a certificate from your tax authority in your own country and submit that to the FDA prior to submission. And then we have class 3, highest risk. There you need a pre-market approval application. That can be up to $100,000 in just application fee. So here it's the highest risk. FDA need to make sure that they have strong evidence, clinical proof to make sure that this is a safe product that they can release on the market. So one of the interesting aspects that happened a little bit before COVID, but kind of really just accelerated, is remote patient monitoring. So CMS, Center for Medicaid and Medicare Services, again, connected to the reimbursement, they released a number of codes that allows remote patient monitoring so that you can have devices in the patient's home and the physician or clinician can monitor that from a distance. So you have RPM, so remote patient monitoring, that involves the use of digital tools to collect and transmit health data. So continuous assessment, and it's for managing chronic conditions, blood pressure, heart rate, weight, glucose levels, etc. And here are the different codes that the clinician will have to submit to CMS or the insurance companies to get payment back. So this is offering up a different type of business opportunity where it's actually it can become quite revenue generating for the physicians to work with remote patient devices. And then you have RTM, so remote therapeutic monitoring, that focuses on non-physiological health data, musculoskeletal or respiratory function, physical therapy, occupational therapy, tracking pain levels, medication adherence, respiratory function, etc. So they also have their own codes and the respective payments. One thing to keep in mind is that RPM and RTM, even though it was announced in 2019, it's still picking up speed. The system is still trying to figure out how do we reimburse this, what is in, what is out, what's qualified, etc. So it requires a little bit more work, where we see a lot of companies supporting the clinicians in developing guides, billing guides. How do you bill for my service? I'm going to walk you through the process so that we can ensure success together. The one aspect with RPM and RTM to keep in mind is that this is obviously not a never-ending revenue stream. I can't have a patient with 10 different devices and bill for each different device every month. So a physician can only bill for RPM for one device for one patient. So it doesn't matter if the patient has 10 different devices, you can only bill one for every month. So I know this is probably going to be touched upon further in the program, but just wanted to share a little bit of experience and feedback from our sense. We talked about this. It's vital to get reimbursed and ensure product market fit. You need the feedback from leading clinicians, and you need to have the necessary resources in place. So I've been in numerous conversations where companies are saying there's no competition. I'm the only product. That might be so, but the US is a very big market, and sometimes it's not about having a direct competitor. Sometimes the substitute is good enough. So just because you're marginally better doesn't mean that the system is going to be open and accept your product. So really think about that in terms of what is my true offering? Because you're also, healthcare is a very conservative industry in terms of changing behaviors. So if something is working, you really need to convince someone that it's worth upgrading or learning a new system, etc. Regulatory hurdles, engage with the FDA as soon as possible because they're going to make your life a lot easier when you know what is required. Is your European data okay? Or do you need to actually have clinical studies in the US because you need to acquire data from a US-based population? When it comes to reimbursement, the system is code-based, so you have several payers, you have private, you have public. Just because you have a code doesn't mean that you get paid. So it's a very complex system where you have to understand, am I going for a new code? Am I leveraging someone else's code? In which insurance are going to accept this code? etc. So really map out that strategy for you. And we see also a lot of companies that can be quite naive in terms of the investments required. You heard just the fees from the FDA perspective, navigating these systems. It takes a lot. If you're going to hire people in the US, expect salaries, especially sales individuals, to have significantly higher salaries than they have in Europe. For example, a very successful pharmaceutical sales rep can make up to $500,000 a year, no problem. That could be a yearly budget for a startup in terms of their expansion. So just keep that in mind. The costs are usually at a different level than in Europe. And as much as you can, use reference cases. Obviously, most of you are going to have something from Europe, but if you can have and build something in the US, that is going to help you so much. If you can say, we've done a pilot with this health system, we have market approval from FDA, we have this key opinion leader on our advisory board, that is creating credibility. That's creating more validation that you know what you're talking about, rather than saying, hey, we're a European company, we've done really well in Europe, but we don't know anything about the US. So be smart in how you're positioning yourself and build that credibility. And just like final summary and key considerations, make sure you build a team of mentors and advisors with experience in the US. Don't be naive thinking you can manage the US with individuals from Europe with zero experience. It is a different culture. It's a different culture depending on which state you're even going to go into. So don't see US as one single country. Make sure you dedicate enough time on your resources to increase chances of success. I mean, it's fantastic that this program is over a 3-year period, because it's going to allow you to ramp up, take the opportunity to learn. Don't go into selling mode, because that's only going to hurt you. Make sure you understand the market, you understand the need and the product market fit before you go into selling mode. If you're looking for investors, be smart about it. They have plenty of options in terms of who they're going to give their money to. Make sure that you're a right fit. Are they in the same seed round? Are they looking to raise the same? Is their fund focusing on the amount that you're looking to raise? Do they have similar products in their portfolio, etc.? And one thing that we strongly recommend to European companies is explore strategic partnerships and co-development. It's really hard to approach the US market on your own. So you need to have an open mindset. You need to understand that one health system have a different population, different type of needs, while the other one could have something that is not suitable for your current product. So be open, understand how you might have to develop and pivot a little bit when it comes to your product to make sure that it's actually a win-win. We talked about reimbursement, talked about product market fit. The value is not necessarily always the same as in Europe. I've had numerous companies say, but we improve quality for patients. I said, that's great, but that is not the primary concern in the US healthcare context. It's about reducing cost or increasing revenue. So be smart in what aspect you promote when it comes to your product. Be aware of legal hurdles, engage with a lawyer early on. This is all about IP, trademarks, making sure that you're protected. Don't share information that you shouldn't. Sign NDAs, make sure you have a US lawyer review all of these documents and not necessarily a Swedish one or a Finnish one. So really make sure that you protect yourself. And finally, when you go to the US, regardless of how big you are in Europe, act like a startup. Learn. Don't do decisions based on your strategy in Europe. Make sure that you develop a new one. This is a new market, and you need to approach it in that way as well, regardless of how successful you are in Europe. And I'm going to end there.
Thank you so much, Claudia. You have so many insights, and I really like that you're very, you give advice as well. So thanks a lot for that. Maybe if there are any questions, we could have time for a few before we let in Virginia. think about if you have time to stay on
Of
for
course.
half an hour more. Okay, great.
Absolutely.
So then I would like to introduce our next speaker, Grace Festa, and she's the Director of Biopharmaceuticals at Virginia Economic Development Partnership, and she will talk about direct investment opportunities in Virginia. Grace, please.
Hey, thank you so much, Anna. Good afternoon, everyone. Good morning for those who are stateside. Let me go ahead and pull up some slides.
Yeah, I hope Claudia didn't scare you all off, and I hope that Grace, you will now convince them that there are good opportunities in the US, and that it's difficult but well worth it.
What I'm going to hopefully convince you all of is that there's a lot of help.
Yeah, right.
It's I don't have a market analysis here, but the size of the market is probably worth your time. Let me roll back to. Can you all see that? Yes. The size of the market is worth your time, and there's a lot of help to be had in the United States. So like Anna said, hi, my name is Grace Festa. I'm the Director of Biopharmaceuticals at the Virginia Economic Development Partnership. We are a state-level economic development group for the state of Virginia, exactly as it sounds. There's no trick in the naming convention here. My roles and responsibilities include both business attraction work as well as ecosystem development within the life sciences arena for Virginia. First of all, let's start out with a map. I don't want to assume everybody knows where Virginia is. So we are located right in the middle of the US East Coast. Population is about 8 million. For those, just to gauge size, I think we're about the size of Switzerland, to put it in European perspective. Blue dots on this map is population density, by the way, and then the rings represent 1 day driving time and 2 days driving time, just to give you a sense of the scale of the United States. It's quite large. So previous advice given to not treat the whole US and look, state by state is good advice. The Virginia Economic Development Partnership, we are, like I said before, a state level organization. We're funded by Virginia taxpayer money, so services we provide are free and confidential. One of the primary things we do is site location services. So we're an example of one of those organizations that can provide assistance. Within our office, we also do some existing business work, economic research work. There's a very, very good export promotion program. And then one of the things that makes Virginia unique, we actually have the country's #1 rated custom training program. So we have all of these folks in-house at the EDP. And for larger hiring, if you get to a point where you need to next stage hire 30 people, 50 people in Virginia, this team can do really, really amazing things, completely customized based on what you need as far as recruiting and training services. Virginia is the top state for business. I can't give a presentation without saying that. We've been the top state for business 5 other times since 2007. So it's just generally a good place to settle down and an easy place to do business in the US. Stable environment, AAA bond rating. So you're gonna get what you originally see in Virginia. We don't go changing the tax rates all the time. Corporate income tax rate hasn't changed since for over 45 years. There's a lot of foreign direct investment happening in Virginia, by the way. A big brunt of it is coming from Europe. So companies you all are going to be familiar with, Volvo, Alfa Laval, all in Virginia. So, you're not going to be alone, as there'll be a community in Virginia of other foreign companies to keep you company. Moving on to the life sciences industry. This is you can see from the dot map here, we have about 5 different areas of a lot of activity, hubs of life science activity in Virginia. Not surprisingly, they're focused on our major research universities. So we've got George Mason University up in the Northern Virginia, anchoring the activity there. University of Virginia out in Charlottesville, Virginia Commonwealth University in Richmond, Old Dominion University out in Hampton Roads, and then Virginia Tech is in the Blacksburg, Roanoke area, the dots furthest west, doing a lot of research in the industry. A couple strengths, particularly that we've got. You're going to see a lot of, it's a diverse industry. So you're going to see, across the spectrum, medical devices, therapies, a pharmaceutical industry is in Virginia. In particular, just so you have an idea of where we've got a couple of particular strengths in the state, metabolic disorders and non-fatty liver disease, we've got particular expertise. There's the brain health is an area of strength in Virginia. Oops, sorry, everyone. I have a very small screen here, so I apologize for moving the slides around on y'all. Let's see. Nope, I can't get my notes up. That's okay. We've got a large pharmaceutical cluster and growing happening in Virginia. I'll talk a bit about that in a minute. There's a medical devices, especially device delivery. So there's a diversity of industries happening in Virginia. One of the things that we can help with is determining, what it is you do, where a good match might be within the state to help you make partners and connections. That's going to be key to success coming into a new market. We talked a little bit about the universities. I won't go through this slide, but there are several major research universities within Virginia. And one of our strengths, we're one of the we're the top ranked for education in the Southeast. So just really, really strong universities leading the way. Some of those other groups I mentioned that can help in Virginia, Virginia Bio Association, that's the state level group that covers biotech. They do advocacy, relationship building, events, etc. Virginia Innovation Partnership Corporation. This is another state level group similar to VEDP, but they provide funding for commercialization for Virginia companies. This is something that you could be eligible for if you did decide to locate in Virginia. Virginia Catalyst, again, similar. It's an organization that provides startup grants for companies in Virginia and operates on a cohort basis. And then for anybody interested in doing clinical trials, Virginia has what's a little bit unique, the Virginia Coordinated Clinical Research Network. That group is responsible for helping making matches between patients, universities, and hospital systems. So it can help get companies integrated into that network and help them make the right partners within Virginia. So that you're getting a really diverse clinical trial pool. couple other organizations that can help. There's several, these are just select few. There's several organizations in Virginia specifically tailored towards helping small businesses in the biotech arena. Activation Capital is based in Richmond. Seville BioHub is based in Charlottesville. Roanoke-Blacksburg Tech Council is based in Roanoke. These groups are running just general counseling services. They're gonna be able to help you match with, you know, lawyers to look at like IP issues. They're going to be running programs to help connect companies to funders, just general supportive environments for biotech companies in particular. And a little bit of update on what is happening in Virginia. There's a lot of activity going on right now in life sciences. Virginia hasn't always been known as, you know, a life sciences hub. You think of areas, you might think of Boston, you know, you might think of San Francisco or the Bay Area. Virginia's been growing quietly but steadily over the years. So most recently, a couple really exciting things happening in the state. We've got over $1 billion of federal, state, and philanthropic funding that's gone towards building a advanced pharmaceutical manufacturing hub in the Richmond-Petersburg area. An organization called the Alliance for Building Better Medicine is championing that movement. That is a partnership between higher ed, industry, government, economic development, workforce folks, etc. So all the major players at the table. We have under construction the Paul and Diane Manning Institute of Biotechnology over at the University of Virginia. That's a 300,000 square foot, I think it's 2,800 square meters, 28,000 square meter facility that will focus on translational medicine for cell gene therapies, nanotechnology, drug delivery. They are currently constructing right now and working on attracting some of the world-class experts in these fields. So it's going to be a really, really impressive facility. Afton Scientific, which is a local company, just announced an expansion. So they're building a new sterile injectable manufacturing plant, which is exciting. That's an announcement's a couple weeks old, so very recent news. ATCC, which is a company that manufactures and stores viruses for research, and also works under some contracts with the federal government. Just announced an expansion last month to create a new biomanufacturing facility in Northern Virginia. And the state government is really dedicated to the biotech industry. We have a governor right now who is a particular champion of the industry. Last budget cycle, they dedicated $90 million towards 3 of our major research universities in order to facilitate some additional collaboration and commercialization startups. There's plans in the works right now to dedicate another sizable amount of money towards the industry to just help further things along, move the ecosystem and grow. And then we've got some new labs under construction as well, incubator space, both in the Roanoke and Charlottesville area. So a lot of exciting activity happening. And I will go ahead and end there. It's hard to condense things down to about 10 minutes. There's a lot of activity, but the thought I would leave you with is, again, there's a lot of support in the U.S. You know, just making you've got a lot of good support through the program you're in right now, and then just making the right connections and letting existing support organizations help introduce you to the people you need to talk to. The Americans are very friendly, so you'll find that once you kind of get your foot in the door, it'll be easier to meet people.
Great, thank you so much, Grace. Yeah, really interesting to hear about all the things that are happening. It seems to be quite, quite a lot and a good environment for companies in this sector. Okay, I don't see any questions for now, so let's just move on to Maryland then, and to Stephanie Tropp, the Director of the Office of Life Sciences at Maryland Department of Commerce.
Hi, thank you. Good morning. Good afternoon, actually.
Yeah,
Sorry.
good afternoon.
Okay, so it sounds like you can hear me, and I've just got to share my slides. Okay, and like Grace, I'm also on a small screen, and I won't be able to see you. So can you see that well?
That looks well.
Okay, great. Thank you. This has been a really wonderful presentation, a great summary to the U.S. so far, and to Virginia as well. And this is really perfect. Thanks for including both of us, because Virginia is our neighbor, and we share a lot of the same kind of characteristics in terms of our populations and our economies and our industry strengths. So we in Maryland, we're right here just north of Virginia. And this whole region between Virginia, Maryland, and the capital of the U.S., Washington, D.C., which is right between us, we call the capital region. And we're talking about kind of this greater region as a life sciences or biopharma hub. We call it the BioHealth Capital Region hub. So our just really high level, our economy in Maryland is quite strong. It's overall very wealthy population, really great place for companies to come and grow, both large and small companies. Within the Department of Commerce, and I'll tell you a little bit more about what we do overall, one thing that we do is focus strategically on supporting the growth of some of the industries that are most important to Maryland's economy. So up top, that is life sciences, but also we really shine in other sectors that are very important in doing your life sciences business. So manufacturing we have here. We're also a logistics hub for import and export, cybersecurity, quantum computing, and so on. It's got strength in all these industries, and these are largely in part a result of all the federal agencies that focus on these sorts of technologies that are here. So Maryland, it's a really diverse state, so it's really wonderful for foreign-born populations from all over the world to come and live. You can easily find your community here and succeed here. And just living here in Maryland, right next to Washington, D.C., I think it's really fun source of community and international exposure, because we have all of the embassies for all the countries right here, and I'm always forever going to the embassies to meet people and go to fun events. So really easy to find your home here. So I'm from the Maryland Department of Commerce. Grace introduced you to all the different agencies they have to support businesses in Virginia. We're structured a little bit differently. We are the state government, and we are the primary economic development agency for the state. So what that means is that we are here to grow our Maryland companies and attract companies to come to Maryland. So we have a lot of activities and services to stimulate private investment and create jobs. And the tourism department is also underneath the Department of Commerce. So we work very closely with tourism as well. So Maryland is a great place to bring and grow your life sciences company. This capital region cluster, we're the #3 ranked biopharma cluster in the country, so we're very proud of that. We've got over 1,900 companies and other organizations that fall under life sciences here in Maryland. And the 4 main things that really make this an advantageous place to do life sciences is our location. You've got easy access to across the US and abroad, very highly connected. And then right here in the state, you've got easy access to lots of assets, uniquely all of those federal agencies that you heard a little bit of from Claudia. So the FDA and CMS that are really important in getting your product to market, but also the National Institutes of Health, which has thousands and thousands of employees doing the most advanced biomedical research in the country. NCI, the National Cancer Institute, as well as a lot of Department of Defense agencies that do biomedical research. So really great opportunities to very easily interact with all those investigators and regulators, as well as legislators in Washington, D.C. So here in Maryland, we have 74 federal labs, which is more than twice the number of any other state. We also have a very strong workforce. Claudia talked about that, thinking about your workforce, where you're going. We've got the #1 STEM workforce, so really, really strong workforce for R&D among highly educated scientists. And we've been investing a lot more in building our biomanufacturing, our more entry level, that specialized technical workforce as well. And we've got over 50,000 people employed in life sciences in the state. We're very successful at receiving R&D awards from some of those federal agencies like NIH. And we'll talk a little bit more about some of our state funding support for investment, job creation, manufacturing, and so on. And we have finally a lot of really amazing innovation going on here in Maryland. We've got over 50 incubators and accelerators and leading global universities, including historically Black colleges and universities, which we're really proud of. As I mentioned, we're a really diverse state and really try to make it a place where everyone can succeed. And some of these university systems that you have probably heard of are Johns Hopkins University and the University of Maryland. And we're also really proud that the state and Baltimore City, our biggest city in particular, has been constantly ranked the #1 city for women in business. So looking at our life sciences ecosystem, whichever part of the industry you are in, you'll have peers here working on the same things. And we have this very complete ecosystem. We've got lots of R&D services like manufacturing and CROs, suppliers and engineering, biotech companies working on therapeutics and diagnostics, medical technology as well. So what that really means is that you have everything you need right here in state to take your product from an idea into development and testing and onto the market. And what's a really unique asset is because of having all the FDA and CMS employees and former employees here, we've got a lot of expertise in those fields, people that you can run into and talk to in person all the time. We have a lot of broad expertise when you're looking at the types of biomedical applications that people are working on. We've got particular strengths in oncology, infectious disease, and in neurotech. So here we are to zoom in a little bit on this Biohealth Capital Region. All these pins are different life sciences organizations throughout the state. Maryland is kind of a funny shape here. We've got some water running up and down the state, which makes it a really beautiful place to live. And just to orient you, Grace showed you that they've got like 5 hubs around the state. All these 3 points, they make a triangle, and they're each about an hour away from each other. So looking at these are our counties, our main counties where we have life sciences. Montgomery County, just to orient you, is a big biotech corridor. It's where the National Institutes of Health is. Baltimore City is where you'll have our main medical universities, so Johns Hopkins University and the University of Maryland, Baltimore. We've got a lot of medical device in Baltimore as well. And then in Frederick, this is a more rural area. There's a lot of Department of Defense there. So we have got companies going to Frederick when they need a lot of space for things like cell manufacturing. So here's some recent developments I wanted to highlight from this presentation that I think I made back in August. Just examples of ways that the state is supporting companies recently. We've had a grant program for building infrastructure, so we awarded some of those grants to, here's a med tech company, that's Cranius, that is listed here first. State contract opportunity for a Maryland company called Backpack Healthcare that does provides mental health services in schools. Also highlighting below some companies that started here in Maryland and really grown to be very successful. These are some biotech companies, Cartesian Therapeutics, which has been located both in Montgomery County and recently moved to expand into Frederick County. They're doing well in the autoimmune space. OS Therapies is a recent spin out of Hopkins that entered was accepted into the very prestigious J-Labs Accelerator, which is actually based in Washington, D.C., very close to Maryland. And another example of a successful spin-out launch out of Johns Hopkins as well. And we are very active globally in helping our companies to export, in building collaborations and partnerships, and in supporting foreign companies to invest in, to expand into the U.S. So just highlighting some MOUs, some collaborations, some companies that are succeeding as they grow here. Bora Pharmaceuticals, touched on that bottom left corner. They're a Taiwanese company that recently took over a large facility in Baltimore City. So we provide a lot of support services to our companies, and won't go through all of them, but this support comes from us, from the Department of Commerce, as well as some partner agencies. Importantly, TEDCO, which is our state's venture arm. They have a lot of variety of funding vehicles and equity investment and grants to support companies at all stages of their development. We have a specific fund focused on stem cell research, and that is an opportunity actually to collaborate with companies that are not in Maryland. So if you're doing stem cell clinical trials in particular, interested in making a partnership with another site in Maryland, you could use those funds. So that applies to you. How would talk more about that? I do want to highlight one unique program that we have here in Maryland is the Biotechnology Investor Incentive Tax Credit. And Claudia talked about seeking private investment from U.S. investors. They generally want you to be located in the U.S. And this program helps Maryland companies to incentivize investors to invest in them, because what it does is it gives the investor, who can be located anywhere, a refund for a portion of their investment, which can be 33% or more. So that can be really lucrative. Our companies are really good at taking advantage of that. We provide a lot of services as well to our companies, whether it's helping you to expand globally, travel and market and exhibit at conferences domestically or internationally. This BioHub Maryland is a state and federally funded biomanufacturing training program, which has been in the works, and I'm actually really excited to be going to their grand opening of their facility later this afternoon. Us and some of our partners like the Maryland Tech Council and TEDCO provide a lot of mentorship, publicity, site selection services, and more. And in particular, for you today, what I want to really highlight is how we support foreign direct investment into Maryland. We can provide all these services, looking for market research, looking for investment opportunities. We can help, we're happy to help make introductions to potential partners for your research or clinical trial collaborations. We help do site visits, provide a lot of information for you, and connect you to resources. And we have a specific program to kind of get your foot in the door here called the Global Gateway Program. And this program was started a few years ago, and it's been really successful. It's specifically geared towards de-risking a soft landing of foreign companies into the US by coming into Maryland. And this program provides up to 2 people from your company physical space in one of our partner incubators, as well as funding for various business support services, whatever you might need, if it's legal or human resources or financing services, provides those services as well. And then we're also building out an exchange program to help our companies find partner relationships to expand globally, kind of the same thing that you are doing with the Health3-2-1 program. So this program, it opens in multiple cycles throughout the year, and it's actually open for applications right now. And there's a link there. Applications are open until November 30th. It's really flexible. If you get accepted into the program, I think you have maybe 6 months to kind of make arrangements with an incubator of your choosing that we help you determine that. And then from that point, you have another 6 months, I believe, to actually come. So if you're thinking about this within the next 12 months, you can go ahead and apply now. Some opportunities to meet us in person coming up. We will be exhibiting and taking 8 or 10 companies to exhibit at the Medica trade show in November in Germany. If that's in your plans, we'd love to meet with you then. And if it's not on your radar, there's an annual investment summit called Select USA that has been taking place actually in Maryland for a while. It'll be held next May. It'll be a great place to come and talk to us, but talk to other states as well. And our presence, our pavilion at that show, we have all of our counties there as well. So it's a great way to actually specifically hone in on, who you might want to partner with, where you might want to go. And then what we will also likely do, if you're coming to that, is do a bus tour for one day, specifically targeted towards life sciences companies, showing you around the state, seeing some sites that might be of interest to you. So here's some of our contact information. I'm Stephanie, if I didn't say that. And in our Office of International Investment and Trade, here's the contact information from my colleague, Andrew, who is our manager for Europe. So he works very closely with our companies that want to export to Europe, as well as European companies that are looking to create relationships and collaborate and come here. That is it for me. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Stephanie. Also very informative. We have some questions. And I don't know, Sean, do you want to post them maybe in person if you're still around? Welcome to do so, but otherwise I can.
Yes, I am. Yeah,
Yeah,
I can
great.
present by myself.
Yeah.
First of all, thank you for all the all the presentations. They're rather informative and enable me to think about what may be the right strategy to start at least the first step when talking about entering into the U.S. market. And I have a question for, I guess my second question was relevant also for Claudia's presentation regarding, my first question is about whether diagnostic will be covered by the either public or private insurance. And you said it depends, but how and where would you recommend, for example, smaller SME Finnish company diagnostics field to start to understand and to explore the potential reimbursement policies and the categories?
So I would start by identifying companies that have a similar solution to you to understand what strategy they've used, seeing if they are covered or if this is an out-of-pocket expense. You can also go to CMS, so the Centers for Medicaid and Medicaid Services, where they list all the CPT, current procedure terminology codes, and you can see and kind of scroll through to see if there's anything similar to what your solution is.
Oh.
But yeah, so the information is out there. It's just a lot of information. You just have to kind of swift through it to identify if it fits your product or not, or your diagnostic tool.
Okay, excellent. We'll check those through. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah. And I guess the next question is for our Maryland representative, who said there will be a lot of funds in Maryland that will be provided for the international direct investment, and also there will be some funds available, especially for the international gateway. I guess that one global gateway. That one sounds very exciting, and I would like to ask how competitive is it to apply for the program, and how competitive is it in general to get the funding in Maryland from your perspective? Yeah.
Thanks. So the Global Gateway Program, if you go to visit the website, it lays out the requirements for your company, which I think some of them are the age of the company. I think just making sure it's not too young, it's more than an idea. I think it requires that to the same end that you have some revenue or have raised some private investment. I think once you just meet the requirements, I think that's mostly what we care about. But I'm happy to connect you to the program manager for that program for more specific questions. And from getting a brief overview at the beginning, it sounds like your companies probably could take advantage of both your Health3-2-1 funding as well to come over to anywhere. And yeah, so that's fantastic. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. We'll check about the detail and then reverse. Thank you. Yeah.
Great. So any other questions, or it's getting a little bit late, I think, yeah, on the other side of the Baltic. And yeah, maybe in Stockholm as well. It's getting almost dark already. So I don't see any other questions. So I think I will just say thank you so much. I might just share my screen again for you, for those of you who want to look at the oh, sorry. There, let me see. To get the code if you want to apply and so on. So I'll just share that. Okay. There you go. And apart from that, I'll just say thank you so much again to our presenters. And yeah, hope to see you in the US. And for all the participants, the companies, don't hesitate to contact us if you have any questions, and please apply. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thank
and
you.
have a good afternoon or
Thank you.
day.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, bye.